the Grouchy Nerd. Alright, quiet down, knuckleheads. It's time to look at another new character from Fantasy Flight Games' Marvel Champions. This time we're looking at War Machine. It's more than military-industrial complex, but point taken. Longtime friend of Tony Stark, Colonel James Rhodes of the U.S. Air Force spent some time as Iron Man when Tony was too drunk, and again when Tony was pretend dead. Pissed that Stark lied about his own death, Rhodes eventually broke ties with Tony and became his own identity, War Machine. He's been a member and leader of the Avengers and the West Coast Avengers, though he always retained his position in the U.S. military. How could he not with that name? War Machine's suits have always been a much more weapons-focused ordeal than Tony's, something that is very much reflected in his gameplay, so let's get into it. On the alter ego side, he's got a hand size of 6 and 10 hit points, and he recovers for 3. He's got shield and soldier traits, and for an action, you can shuffle a War Machine card from your discard into your deck. Now, unless there's some sort of errata that I've missed, there doesn't seem to be a limit on this of any kind, so you can just put all your War Machines from your discard pile back into your deck. That's crazy. It also says that when you change to Rhodey, you have to discard all ammo counters on him. Alright, so now let's flip over to the War Machine side and see what that's all about. War Machine has a thwart of 1 and his attack and defense are 2. His hand size goes down the expected 1, so no weird hand size shenanigans like Iron Man's. Nice. His traits are now Avenger and Soldier, and he gets locked and loaded. After you change to this form, place 5 ammo counters on him. So kind of like Drax and Groot, he's got this unique resource that is going to let him play some very, very powerful cards. So let's get into his kit and see what some of those cards are. First up is his signature ally, Iron Man, in the style of Tony Stark. He costs 3, has 2s in his stats, and 3 hit points. After Iron Man enters play, search your deck and discard for a tech upgrade and add it to your hand. Yes, please. War Machine relies almost as much on setup as Iron Man does, and when you're playing true solo, that can be very, very tricky because he can't really spend a whole lot of time in alter ego or the threat's going to get out of hand. So anything that kind of helps accelerate that getting all of the pieces of your suit together is awesome, and the fact that it's his buddy, come on, it's adorable. Next is Munitions Bunker, a 2-cost support with the shield and location traits. When you're in alter ego, you can exhaust this to put 2 ammo counters on it, and then take those counters off when you're in hero form. So that means when he dips down to alter ego and comes back up to War Machine, he's now going to have 7 ammo counters on him. That's pretty good. Furthering the incentive to occasionally drop down to alter ego is your upgraded chassis, a 3-cost tech upgrade that gives War Machine the aerial trait and also gives him a tough status card when you change to hero form. That's a free block after you recover. That's great! Next, we have 2 copies of Gauntlet Gun, a 2-cost tech upgrade that exhausts to generate a wild resource for a War Machine event and adds an ammo counter to War Machine. Okay, so yes, the resource is restricted to a War Machine event, and that's kind of a bummer, but you're also getting that ammo counter, and remember, he has a way to get all of those events for War Machine back into his hand so you can recur them fairly often. 1 copy of 1-cost Missile Launcher, exhaust it and spend 1 ammo counter from War Machine to do 2 damage to an enemy. And that attack is ranged, so it ignores Retaliate. It's cheap to get out, and it's a great way to deal with a minion, or maybe even better, to deal with a tough status card. Next is Shoulder Cannon, a 2-cost tech upgrade. Exhaust it to deal 1 damage to an enemy, and then optionally spend an ammo to ready it. So you could exhaust this and then ready it over and over and over until you run out of ammo. I don't know, like maybe if you're going to flip down to alter at the end of this turn and you don't have another way to spend those counters, but regardless, this is a great way to get rid of a tough status. Next is 2 copies of Repulsor Beam, a 1-cost event that spends an ammo counter to do 4 damage to an enemy. And 2 copies of Targeted Strike, a 1-cost thwart event, spend 1 ammo token to remove 3 threat from a scheme. So both of these cards are really good. They both cost 1 resource and 1 ammo, or, with a Gauntlet Gun, they cost nothing. What? Next is 2 copies of a 3-cost event, Scorched Earth, which lets you spend 3 ammo counters to do 3 damage to each enemy in play. Situationally, this card can be very, very powerful. I do think it's probably better in multiplayer, so I hate it. But also, it's really good, so I don't hate it. Next up is 2 copies of Full Auto, which costs 2. Remove 4 ammo tokens to do 8 damage to an enemy with Overkill. So most heroes have a big attack like this, but they usually cost 3. This one costs 2, but then it also costs the 4 ammo tokens, which are kind of hard to come by, but then it also does overkill, so there's a... The fact that it costs so many ammo means that it will almost definitely get into your hand at the wrong time. The bad stuff. War Machine's obligation is equipment malfunction with a picture of a pretty phallic gun. Aren't they all? Flip to alter ego and exhaust to get rid of it, or don't flip and remove all your ammo counters to discard it. But if that means removing 2 or fewer, it also gains surge. Phallus aside, this honestly could be worse. War Machine flipping down to alter ego and having a chance to rebuild up his ammo, and also if you have the upgraded chassis, get a tough status. Living Laser is War Machine's signature nemesis and also a very stupid name. It's a very dumb name. He's got 1 scheme, 2 attack, 4 HP, and has quick strike, so he attacks when you draw him, and piercing, so he removes tough status. I hate quick strike. War Machine's signature side scheme is Deadly Light Show, and it sucks. 3 threat with a hinder of 1 per hero and has the crisis icon, and it does damage to you when you defeat it. Ugh. Ugh. Last up is 3 copies of Laser Strike, a treachery that makes you discard an upgrade you control, whether it's drawn or boosts. Upgrades are kind of a big deal when you're rolling around in a suit made entirely of upgrades. Kind of a big deal. Onto his aspect cards. First up is the ally Black Panther, played by T'Challa, who costs 4 to get out, has 4 hit points, does 2 thwart, and 2 attack with 2 consequential damage each. But the real headline is his ability. When he enters play, choose a leadership event from your discard and place it on Black Panther. Then you may play that event as if it were in your hand. The potential here is incredible. The resource cost to get him out is a lot, but being able to recur something like make the call early in the game so that you can get Iron Man out more times so that you can get more tech upgrades. It's pretty good. Next up is the even costlier Captain Marvel, the Carol Danvers years. Her cost is 5, but she has 4 hit points, 2 thwart, and 3 attack, but that attack does 2 consequential damage. When she enters play, discard 4 cards and deal 3 damage to an enemy if you discard an energy icon that way. Deal 3 damage and stun that enemy if you discard more than 1 energy icon. So she's pretty expensive to get out, and her main ability is only when she comes out, so that's kind of hard to justify that cost, I feel like. Though it's probably better in a Thor or Iron Man deck where you're already kind of leaning toward trying to find as many energy icons as you can. Still. 5. Next is 3 copies of Command Team, a 2-cost support with 3 command counters. Exhaust it and spend a counter to ready an ally. Really good, especially in those kind of Voltron decks where you're building up a specific ally to do a lot of the heavy lifting, especially if it's, I don't know, Black Cat or Yondu or somebody who doesn't take consequential damage when they attack. Alright, up next is 3 copies of Sneak Attack, which is absolutely the most exciting card in this entire pack. It's a 1-cost event that puts out an ally you share a trait with that then discards at the end of the phase. So they're not going to be able to block an attack for you more than likely, but they do get to do all those leadership allies that do something when they come in or that can make themselves more powerful, like Vision can boost his attack. Now that can come out for 1 cost and then just get out of there. 3 copies of Save the Day just spice the whole thing up even more. It's a 1-cost event to discard an ally you control to remove threat from a scheme equal to that ally's printed cost. And 3 copies of Go Down Swinging, a 0-cost event that does the same thing but for damage. The combo potential here is incredible, particularly in late game when you've kind of thinned your deck out. All your upgrades are hopefully out in front of you and in play, and so your deck is just events and allies, maybe? Next up is a 3-cost team-up card for War Machine and Iron Man. It's max 1 per deck, but the pack did come with 2, so no worries there. For a hero action, search your deck for a tech upgrade and put it into play. Also, ready Iron Man and War Machine. Readying both characters is almost worth the price of admission alone, but the fact that you get to search your entire deck, not just like the top 6 cards, it's the entire deck for a tech upgrade, and put it into play. Not put it into your hand, not gives you the chance to then pay for it. It just goes into play. Whew. That's good. As 1 is our aggression card. We got 3 copies of a 2-cost event, and it has the Alliance keyword. Exhaust an Avenger character and a Guardian character. Deal their combined damage with Overkill. Again, this is huge potential. The Alliance keyword means that any number of players can help pay the cost. So obviously that means it's probably going to be better in multiplayer or playing multi-handed. I think going true solo, the only way I would really include this, though, is if I were playing as an Avenger with all Guardians allies, or most Guardians allies, or vice versa. Maybe you're doing some weird thing with Star-Lord where he has all Avengers allies who are then also Guardian allies because of Star-Lord. Something like that I think would be good. I just don't know if in general the Alliance keyword is going to be something that's going to get my attention too much when I play solo. Next, we got 2 copies, which is also the deck maximum, of a 1-cost Justice support called Vigilante Training that has very fun art. It gets 2 training counters, and as an alter ego action, you can exhaust this card and remove a training counter to choose a Justice event from your discard and put it into your hand. 7, clear the areas in 1 trip through the deck. Okay. Stand Together is our protection card, of which we get 3, and it's another Alliance card. It costs 4, which is pretty steep, but again, if you have friends or you play multi-handed, it's probably not that bad. When a friendly character would take any amount of damage from an attack, exhaust an Avenger and a Guardian to not only prevent that damage, but do it back to the attacker. So yeah, it's got all the same caveats as the other Alliance card. I don't know that I'm gonna find a place for this in most of my solo decks, but it's a really good card if you can. Last up is 3 copies of a 1-cost neutral card called Sidearm. Attached to an ally, max 1 per ally, and that ally gets +1 attack, and the attack gains range, so it ignores retaliate. This is very good. I love that it's neutral and it can go in any deck. It's really good for any character that doesn't take consequential damage when they attack. It's good if you're using as one or teamwork. It's just good. I gotta say, I thought War Machine was a blast to play. I was a little concerned it was going to be pretty similar to Iron Man, but he turned out to not be at all. I feel like those 2 characters play entirely differently. The ammo counters are at once something that is very fun, but also a little bit frustrating because, boy, you burn through those things. And if you don't have Gauntlet Guns out, they're just gone, and then you have to dip back down to alter ego, otherwise half your cards do nothing. He came with leadership, which I think is really good for him, but also justice is really good for him because he does need to go down to alter ego relatively often. Even if you do have the Gauntlet Guns out, you're gonna want to reload your ammo every now and then, and getting the upgraded chassis out and getting the military base out to make that ammo better and get that tough status with the upgraded chassis, you're gonna want to go down to alter ego. So doing something that can confuse or just otherwise mitigate the built-up threat that happens when you go down to alter ego is going to be very, very important with him. He's fun. He's a good time. All right, that's it for War Machine. Get off my lawn. The Grouchy Nerd.